After experimenting a bit with Throne and Liberty during its open beta, and finally getting a better idea of what this game could look like, I was considering whether or not I should make a video talking about my impressions of the game. Truth is, I think there is already plenty of reviews about Throne. If you want to watch channels that are covering the game, you can watch It's Me Mac or Canon. A lot has been said about some of the problems that the game has, like the strange camera movements and how bad the combat feels. It's very difficult to point out why does it feel so bad, but oh no. To be completely honest, at least during the beta you could very much still feel that, let's say, mobile game DNA on the gameplay. And from what I've heard, there's been some positive changes in the Korean version that have really improved these aspects a lot. So we just have to wait and see now. But if there's something that I haven't really seen people talk about is the guild system. Particularly, the way that you distribute loot and raid items with the guild auction system. In short, when you kill world bosses, or you do raids, or different events, the game can sometimes reward players with items of quite the good quality. The thing is that compared to other games, where the items go straight to your pocket, or you see a window where everybody can choose whether they want the item or not, the loot in Throne goes directly into the guild auction system. And I think it is no minor detail, because in my stay on the beta, I noticed that some of these items would appear on the auction system, while other members of the guild were doing content in which I was not even participating. The thing is that I, as leader of the guild, had the power to choose who had the right to bid and eventually buy these items. In other words, if I so desired, I could close the entries to bid on the item for every member of my guild except for me, thus giving me the chance to get said item for the modicum amount of 10 lucent, which is the in-game currency for the player's market. This is something I was able to test a few days before the beta closed, and it has me thinking quite a bit in what is going to happen with a system like this in a community as competitive and arbitrary such as the MMO community in the West. After all, games like Lineage 2, Albion Online or Throne, where there is a steep focus in PvP, needs a player ecosystem that is able to sustain a guild's functionality and needs. This creates certain dynamics between players, and it is necessary to have different roles coupled with some sort of hierarchy. After all, the guilds that usually dominate these types of games require vast amounts of effort and organization. That's why I've decided to do a video commenting on the loot distribution systems that I've seen in games like World of Warcraft, which has an extensive history of strategies to decide who deserves the items that are obtained in the content. Since there will be the possibility that players can arbitrarily dictate who is going to get the items, I think this can be useful for people who want to consider these strategies and see what their advantages and disadvantages are. But there's also a detail that I want to address later on, and that I think has the potential to cause a lot of toxicity in a game like Throne. If you don't care too much about the loot systems, you can skip forward to here. Group loot roll. Probably one of the oldest systems. The roll system is quite simple. An item drops, people roll dice, which is usually done with a chat command, and then whoever gets the highest number gets the item. For many, this system seems quite fair because everything is left to luck. However, it does have its problems. What happens if the person that takes the item doesn't really need it? Or worse still, they can't even use it. Maybe they just wanted to sell it somewhere. For those cases, people usually make the distinction between those who can actually use the item and those who can't. That way you can make sure that whoever gets the loot will actually use it and potentially help the guild. The other problem with this system is that it doesn't really give you any guarantees about the members of your guild. You can have situations where you get a new member, you take them to the raid for the first time, they get all the items through sheer luck, and then they decide that they no longer need to be with this guild and go on to look for new horizons. Or, straight up, stop playing. It is what it is. Master Looter system. This system is very simple. There is one person in the guild, or the raid group, that holds all the power over the items that drop. This person will decide who takes what. In a perfect world, where your guild master is a veteran who has a lot of experience, knowledge about the classes, about the game systems, and also has enough vision to understand what could benefit the guild the most, and how can you strengthen your guild members with the loot that drops. This system can be incredible, but reality is very different. I think it doesn't take much to imagine that this is probably one of the systems with the biggest amounts of corruption cases. Without an upstanding and just leader, you can easily end up playing for weeks without getting a single item. South American guilds, watch out for this one. Loot Council system. This system is quite similar to Master Looter, but the difference is that here you have a group of people that will make the decisions over the loot. Ironically, this system was born to avoid the corruption that can arise with having only one person with such power. But it is also a different approach that allows players to have a more open conversation, where you can have multiple perspectives as to why someone would deserve an item. Again, reality can be very different, and nepotism usually creeps in sooner than later. Points and auction systems. This system can be an interesting concept. Basically, the guild has a list of activities or reasons for which the members of the guild can earn points. These activities are generally beneficial to the guild, like farming materials for professions and then donating them, helping low-level members to level up, having a good performance and showing up in time for guild events, etc. Each guild can have its own parameters. Those who are leaning more into a hardcore experience usually design these points in a way that you can earn them by doing the end game content. Other guilds will have a more varied approach, like giving points for helping people get included more in the game, or simply being friendly to other guildies. Once players have accumulated these points, they can use it to bid on items in an internal auction of the guild, and that way, they can quote-unquote buy the item that drops on the content. The most appealing thing about this system is that it offers a lot of flexibility when it comes to defining what is it that you value as a guild. This can also create a stronger feeling of community between the members of your group, since players can feel rewarded and thus more motivated to participate in the different activities of the guild. Particularly in Throne, having these points can be quite convenient, because instead of making people spend the in-game currency for these items, in this case Lucent, you can simply spend these fictional points to decide who gets the items. This means that players can then use their money for other things that help them advance their progression. The biggest problem with this system is that nobody likes to manage all the information needed for it to work. Keeping the count of points that players earn and not forgetting any detail can be really exhausting and annoying. Besides, it is not a very friendly system for newcomers. For example, let's suppose that we take a new member of the guild to a raid. Everything is good and you have plenty of loot to distribute. Since the newcomer obviously wants to get geared, they use the little points that they have to bid for items. But for some godforsaken reason, one of your veterans wants to bid on the item as well. So, both bid on the item and it becomes instantly clear that the difference between the points acquired by one compared to the other is abysmal. Not very fair, right? Especially when the veteran player takes the item and then just sells it on the market. For these situations, people have taken measures, like a tax system or even doing hard resets on the points accumulated after some time, so that you avoid having someone that accumulates so many points that they can just take an item whenever they want and for whatever reason. However, if you decide to do something like this, not only are you making the management more complicated, but it also makes the more hardcore players not as interested anymore in joining your guild. What a surprise, huh? Anyway, those were some of the systems that I know. Obviously, there's many different iterations and some other systems that I don't know of, but these systems have been created by different communities as an effort to make the acquisition and distribution of loot in MMOs something more fair. And this is the thing. A game like Throne, where PvP determines your access to resources, rankings, fame, the influence that guilds can have, I think I can guarantee that there will be quite the suspicious dynamics between players. There will always be people looking to have an advantage over others as soon as possible, and they are willing to do anything to obtain it. Even though I've never played Albion Online, I've heard some stories that could very easily be a strong contender for the betrayal stories seen in Game of Thrones. In fact, Preach Gaming, who has covered World of Warcraft for a long time, has a whole video series called Drama Time, in which people send him their stories about all kinds of experiences in the game. The amount of betrayal, deception, backstabbing, I mean, some of these people were even cheating on one another. Knowing the world of MMOs and the way that people can behave on the internet, the question is, what do you think is going to happen in a game like Throne and Liberty? In Korea they have it figured out. Everybody uses the auction system with Lucent, and that's that. But I will leave you guys with the task of making up your own theories about what will happen in the West. I do want to say the following. There can be times where people will join certain guilds because they are either a really big community, or they have a lot of resources, or they are more hardcore, and thus your chances of having access to better content and to be a part of a group with real opportunities to make a name for themselves can exponentially increase. Nonetheless, I think it is very important to really, thoroughly think about what is the experience that you want to have in Throne, because it is very likely that you will find unfair situations and somewhat toxic environments. And I don't think simply because you want to be a part of a group that you should subject yourself to things that you shouldn't accept. You might find guilds that do not value your participation, don't treat you very well, nor they give you the opportunities that you're looking for to progress with your character. If you find yourself in groups like these, please don't stay there, or at the very least, put a stop to it. Is it really worth it to be berated just to get a bunch of pixels? I think the main thing I wanted to address with this video is boundaries. It is important to know where your boundaries lie, so that other people don't cross the line with you, or to make sure that you won't accept an agreement that doesn't really benefit you when it comes to being part of a group. Here we have to know how to fight against FOMO and peer pressure, but to each their own. If you watched this video and some of the things that I said reminded you of some stories about what people are capable of in order to get some pixels, please leave a comment with your story. I will make some tea and we'll probably have a blast reading them. I've been having fun in Warcraft lately, but I will try to create a guild for Throne once it is released. As always, my name is Zun, and until next time!